Jake Harrison stood in the council chambers for the last time. The massive hall stretched out before him, filled with beings from dozens of worlds. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few glowed with their own light. For 300 years, humans had sat among them as equals. Today that would end. The message had come 12 hours ago. Every human in council space received it at the same time. The words were simple and clear. Come home. Bring everything. Leave nothing behind. Jake looked at his tablet one more time. The evacuation order came from Earth Command itself. No room for questions. No time for goodbyes. He had spent 20 years building friendships with alien diplomats. Now he had to walk away from all of it. Ambassador Harrison, said Zethkari, the tall, blue-skinned leader of the council. Surely there is some mistake. Your people cannot simply leave without explanation. Jake shook his head. The order is clear. All humans must return to human space immediately. Around the chamber, other species whispered among themselves. The Draconians, with their sharp teeth and red eyes, looked confused. The gentle vegans, who resembled walking trees, swayed nervously. Even the proud Zentaurians seemed worried. But what about the trade agreements? Asked Minister Veltar from the Andorian Federation. Your people helped us create the most successful trade routes in the galaxy. What about our defense treaties? Added General Krestar of the Draconian fleet. Human tactics have kept our borders safe for decades. Jake felt a weight in his chest. These aliens had become his friends. They trusted humans. They relied on human help, but the order was absolute. Every human had to leave. I am sorry, Jake said. The decision has been made. He picked up his bag and walked toward the exit. Behind him, the chamber erupted in confused voices. Aliens called out questions in dozens of languages. Jake did not turn around. Outside the council building, human ships filled the sky. Transport vessels, cargo haulers, and military escorts moved in perfect formation. Jake had never seen such an organized evacuation. Every human settlement, every research station, every diplomatic post was being emptied at the same time. Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of the Earthship Defiant. She watched as the last human soldiers left Kepler Station. The massive space station had been their home for 50 years. Human engineers had built most of its defensive systems. Human scientists had discovered new ways to generate power. Human doctors had saved thousands of alien lives in the medical bay. Now they were taking it all with them. Captain, said her first officer, the Zentaurians are asking why we are removing the defense computers. Because those computers have human technology, Lisa replied. We built them. We take them. The officer looked uncomfortable. But sir, without those systems the station will be defenseless. Lisa knew he was right. The aliens had grown used to human protection. Their own technology was old and slow. They preferred tradition over innovation. Humans had always been the ones to try new things, to take risks, to find better ways of doing old jobs. That is not our problem anymore, she said. Down in the research labs, Amy Parker packed the last of her equipment. She had spent 15 years studying alien biology. Her work had led to cures for diseases that killed millions. Her team had developed new medicines that worked on dozens of different species. The alien scientists working with her looked lost. Dr. Parker, said Dr. Velkon, a small gray alien with large eyes. How will we continue the research without you? Amy sealed another crate of equipment. You will have to find your own way. But we do not understand the quantum biology methods. Only humans can make the machines work properly. Amy stopped packing for a moment. She had trained Dr. Velkon for 3 years. He was smart and dedicated, but he could not think the way humans did. None of the aliens could. I have left detailed instructions, she said. That will have to be enough. She picked up the crate and walked toward the transport ship. Behind her, the lab that had been her life's work stood empty. The alien scientists would try to continue her research, but Amy knew they would fail. They thought too slowly, too carefully. They could not make the logical jumps that human minds made naturally. In the military sector, Ben Walsh oversaw the removal of the tactical computers. These machines had reduced pirate attacks by 80%. They could predict enemy movements and suggest counter-strategies that no alien commander had ever thought of. "Commander Walsh," said Admiral Zorth of the Centaurian Defense Force, "our fleets will be blind without these systems." Ben continued directing his team. "You managed before humans arrived. You will manage again. But the pirates have grown stronger. They use new tactics. Our old methods will not work against them." Ben knew this was true. Human strategies had evolved to counter every new threat. The tactical computers learned and adapted in real time. Traditional alien military thinking was too rigid, too predictable. "That is your challenge now," Ben said. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out on hundreds of worlds. Human engineers removed their innovations. Human doctors took their medical advances. Human diplomats ended negotiations that had taken years to arrange. The aliens watched in growing panic. They had not realized how much they depended on human creativity, human solutions to problems, human ways of thinking that found answers where others saw only impossible challenges. On the trade station at Alpha Centauri, Helen Cross finished her last negotiation. She had spent months helping the Fringe Collective reach an agreement with the core worlds. The deal would have brought peace to a region that had known only war for centuries. Now she was canceling everything. "Ambassador Cross," pleaded Captain Rain of the Fringe Collective, "without this agreement, my people will starve." Helen felt sorry for him. She had grown to respect the tough miners and traders of the Fringe. But her orders were clear. "Find another way," she said. "There is no other way. Only humans could bring our peoples together. Only humans understood both sides." Helen sealed her diplomatic files. "Then you will have to learn to understand each other." As the human ships prepared to leave, emergency communications flooded the networks. Alien leaders demanded explanations. They offered bribes, threatened sanctions, begged for just a few humans to stay behind. But the evacuation continued. Within 72 hours, every human had left Council space. They took their technology, their knowledge, and their unique way of seeing problems. Behind them, they left empty buildings and a galaxy full of very worried aliens. The last human ship disappeared into hyperspace just as the Council called an emergency session. For the first time in 3 centuries, no human representative sat in the chamber. The age of human participation in galactic affairs had ended as suddenly as it had begun. 6 months had passed since the humans left. Zethkari stood in his office looking out at the Council stations orbiting his homeworld. Everything looked normal, but he knew better. The cracks were starting to show. The first reports had seemed minor. A mining operation here, a trade route there, small problems that could be fixed. But as the weeks passed, the problems grew bigger. The door chimed and his aide entered. "Sir, we have another report from the Proxima Mining Consortium." Zethkari sighed. "How bad is it this time?" "Production is down 60%. They cannot maintain the extraction rates without the human-designed algorithms." Zethkari took the report and read it carefully. The Proxima mines had been the most productive in the galaxy. Human engineers had developed new ways to extract rare metals from deep within asteroids. The process was complicated, involving quantum-level manipulation of molecular bonds. The alien engineers who remained could run the machines, but they could not fix them when they broke. They could not modify them for new types of asteroids. They could not improve the process to make it more efficient. "What about the technical manuals Dr. Parker left behind?" Zethkari asked. "The engineers say the instructions are too complex. They need someone who understands the theory behind the machines, not just how to operate them." Zethkari set down the report. This was the same story everywhere. Humans had not just operated technology, they had understood it in ways that other species could not match. In the Outer Rim, Admiral Krestar faced a different kind of crisis. Pirate attacks had increased by 300% in just 6 months. The careful patrol patterns that Commander Ben Walsh had designed were falling apart. "Admiral," said Captain Vexhall, "we have lost another convoy in the Titan sector. The pirates knew exactly where to strike." Krestar studied the tactical display. Red dots marked the locations of recent attacks. They formed a pattern, but he could not see what it meant. "How did they know our patrol schedule?" he asked. "They are learning our methods, sir. Our patrols follow standard military doctrine. The patterns are predictable." Krestar felt frustrated. Standard doctrine had worked for thousands of years. It was tested and proven, but somehow, the pirates were always one step ahead. What he did not understand was that Ben Walsh had thrown out standard doctrine completely. Human patrol patterns looked random to outside observers. They relied on psychological warfare, sudden changes in strategy, and creative use of limited resources. The pirates had been confused and frightened by human unpredictability. Now they faced traditional alien tactics, which followed logical patterns they could easily decode. "Increase patrols in the affected sectors," Krestar ordered. "Sir, that will leave other areas undefended. Then we will patrol those areas next." "Weak." Captain Vexhall looked concerned. "Sir, the humans would never have done it that way." "The humans are gone," Krestar snapped. "We use proper military strategy now." 3 days later, pirates hit the undefended sectors while the fleet was busy elsewhere. On the trade station at Rigel 7, the situation was even worse. Ambassador Helen Cross had been in the middle of negotiating a complex peace treaty between the Fringe Collective and the Core Worlds when she left. The negotiations had taken 2 years of careful diplomacy. Now the talks had collapsed completely. Minister Veltar of the Andorian Federation sat across from Captain Rain of the Fringe Collective. Between them lay months of failed discussions. "Your demands are unreasonable," Veltar said coldly. "Your offers insult my people," Rain replied. Both sides had been saying the same things for weeks. Neither could find common ground. Neither understood what the other side really wanted. Helen Cross had been able to see past the formal positions to the real needs underneath. The Fringe Collective needed food and medicine for their children. The Core Worlds needed the rare metals that Fringe miners could provide. Both sides wanted security and respect, but Helen had a gift for reading people that the other diplomats lacked. She could tell when someone was bluffing, when they were afraid, when they were ready to make a deal. She knew how to offer something that seemed small but meant everything to the other side. The remaining diplomats had no such skills. They could only repeat their positions and hope the other side would eventually give in. "Perhaps we should postpone these talks," Veltar suggested. "Perhaps we should," Ryan agreed. They shook hands formally and left the room. Outside, their fleets continued to patrol their borders, ready for the war that seemed more likely every day. The medical crisis hit hardest on Vega Prime. Dr. Carl Johnson had developed treatments for diseases that affected multiple species. His cross-species medicine had saved millions of lives across the galaxy. Now a new plague was spreading through the Vegan colonies. The tree-like vegans were dying by the thousands. Their own doctors had no idea how to stop it. Dr. Thelmar was the chief medical officer on Vega Prime. He had worked with Dr. Johnson for 10 years, but he still did not understand how human medicine worked. "The symptoms are unlike anything we have seen," he reported to the Council Medical Board. "The plague affects the nervous system, but it also damages the photosynthetic organs. Our treatments for one problem make the other worse." "What would Dr. Johnson have done?" asked Dr. Zenkral from the medical board. "He would have looked for connections between the symptoms. He would have tested combinations of treatments that seem impossible. He would have experimented with medicines that should not work together." Dr. Zenkral was confused. "But that is not proper medical procedure. We test treatments one at a time, following established protocols." "Yes," Dr. Thelmar said sadly. "And while we follow proper procedures, thousands of my people die." The human approach to medicine had seemed reckless to many alien doctors. Humans would try new combinations of drugs, experiment with treatments from other species, and ignore traditional boundaries between different types of medicine. But human medicine worked. Patients who should have died lived. Diseases that had plagued species for centuries disappeared. Humans could see connections that escaped other doctors. Now, without human innovation, the old diseases were returning. The infrastructure problems were perhaps the most visible. Nora Phillips had designed fusion reactors that powered half the stations in Council space. The reactors were marvels of engineering, producing more power than anything the Council had seen before, but they required constant adjustment and modification. Each reactor was slightly different, customized for its specific location and power needs. The alien engineers who remained could perform basic maintenance, but they could not optimize the systems or solve unexpected problems. On Kepler Station, Chief Engineer Torval watched as power output dropped for the third time that week. The reactor is functioning within normal parameters, his assistant reported. Then why are we only getting 70% power? Torval asked. Unknown, sir. The human engineer would have made adjustments to the quantum field generators, but we do not understand how she determined what adjustments to make. Torval felt helpless. The technical manuals were thousands of pages long, full of complex mathematics and theoretical physics, but they did not explain how to think like an engineer. They did not explain how to see problems before they became critical. They did not explain how to innovate. Humans had made engineering look easy because they approached it like an art form rather than a science. They could feel when something was wrong with a machine. They could imagine solutions that had never been tried before. The aliens had to follow the manual step by step, which meant they were always one step behind the problems. As the months passed, the reports piled up on Zethkari's desk. Trade down 40%. Military effectiveness reduced by half. Infrastructure failing across 12 star systems. Medical crises spreading faster than treatments could be developed. And through it all, the same message appeared in every report. This would not have happened if the humans were still here. Zethkari finally understood what the Council had lost. Humans had not just been another member species. They had been the innovation engine that kept galactic civilization running. Without them, everything was slowly falling apart. 2 years had passed since humanity left, and the Council chamber had never been so tense. Emergency sessions had become routine. Every week brought new crises that seemed impossible to solve. Zethkari stood before the assembled representatives and spoke the words that many had refused to accept. We have a problem. We need the humans back. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Admiral Cressitar slammed his clawed hand on his desk. We are the Draconian Empire. We do not need anyone. Your empire has lost 6 border worlds to pirates in the last month. Zethkari replied coldly. Tell me again how you do not need help. Dr. Zenkral from the medical board stood up. The plague on Vega Prime has spread to 14 colonies. Our doctors cannot stop it. Only human medicine showed promise, and they took all their research with them. Minister Veltar of the Andorian Federation looked exhausted. The trade routes are collapsing. Without human diplomatic skills, we cannot maintain agreements between hostile species. War is coming to 3 sectors because no one can negotiate. Peace. The truth was hard to face, but it could not be ignored anymore. The galaxy was falling apart without human innovation. What do you suggest? Asked Speaker Yilan of the Neutral Zone Coalition. Zethkari activated a holographic display showing recruitment statistics. We have tried to replace human capabilities with other species. The results are not encouraging. The Wanderer clans had been the first attempt. These nomadic traders moved constantly through space, adapting to new situations daily. Council recruiters thought their flexibility might match human creativity. Captain Rexanda of the Wanderer recruitment mission delivered his report with obvious disappointment. The Wanderers can adapt their ships and trade routes, but they cannot innovate like humans. They work with what exists, but they cannot imagine what does not exist yet. The recruitment team had presented the Wanderers with a broken fusion reactor, the same type that Nora Phillips used to fix in hours. The Wanderers had spent 3 weeks studying the problem before declaring it unsolvable. A human engineer would have seen the solution immediately and probably found 2 ways to improve the original design. The Fringe Collective had been the next attempt. These rough miners and traders lived dangerous lives on the galaxy's edge. They had to be creative to survive. Surely they could think like humans. Commander Walshitar, who led the Fringe recruitment effort, shook his head sadly. The Fringe peoples are tough and brave, but they think only about immediate survival. They cannot plan long-term strategies or see connections between different problems. The military had tested fringe fighters in simulated battles. They fought well in individual combat, but they could not work together as a unit. They could not adapt their tactics when the enemy changed strategy. Most importantly, they could not think several moves ahead the way human commanders did. "What about the synthetic alliance?" asked Dr. Zenkral. "Artificial intelligences should be able to process information like humans." The report on AI recruitment was even more discouraging. Professor Unit 7742 had attempted to replicate human medical research for 6 months. The AI could process vast amounts of data and follow complex procedures perfectly, but it could not make the intuitive leaps that led to breakthrough discoveries. "The artificial minds are too logical," explained Dr. Thelmar, who had worked with the AI medical team. "They cannot imagine impossible solutions. They cannot think outside their programming. Humans could look at a disease and suddenly wonder if the cure might come from a completely unrelated source. AIs cannot make such illogical connections." The worst part was that these recruitment efforts had cost valuable time and resources. While the Council searched for human replacements, the crises continued to worsen. Admiral Cressitar finally admitted what everyone knew: "We have tried to copy human battle strategies with our own commanders. We have failed completely." The military situation had become desperate. Pirates now controlled large sections of space that had been safe for centuries. The careful balance of power that human diplomacy had maintained was collapsing into open warfare. "Human tactics made no sense to us," Admiral Cressistar continued. "They would attack where they appeared weakest. They would retreat when they should advance. They would split their forces when they should concentrate. But somehow their strategies always worked." General Mortak of the Zentorian Defense Force nodded in agreement. "We tried to implement human battle plans, but we could not understand the reasoning behind them. When we followed the plans exactly, we lost. When we modified them to make sense, we lost worse. The problem was that human military thinking relied on psychology as much as tactics. Humans understood how their enemies thought. They could predict when an opponent would make mistakes. They could manipulate enemy emotions to create openings for attack. The aliens could copy human actions, but they could not copy human intuition." Chief Engineer Torvald delivered perhaps the most devastating report. "The infrastructure failures are accelerating. We estimate complete system breakdown within 18 months if current trends continue. The engineering problems had multiplied beyond all expectations. Without human innovation, the advanced systems that powered galactic civilization were slowly dying. Each breakdown led to more breakdowns. Each failed repair made the next problem harder to solve. We have the technical manuals," complained Engineer Velkon. "But the manuals assume knowledge that only humans possess. They assume a way of thinking that we cannot replicate." "Give me an example," Zethkari said. "The reactor on Proxima Station failed last week. The manual said to adjust the quantum field generators to compensate for harmonic resonance. We do not know what that means. We do not know how to measure harmonic resonance. We do not know what adjustments to make. The human engineers just knew these things. They felt them. Engineer Phillips once told me that she could hear when a reactor was running incorrectly. She could sense problems before they appeared on any instrument. We cannot learn to hear machines." The Council had also tried to contact humanity directly. Long-range communication arrays sent messages toward human space, offering negotiations, trade agreements, and generous terms for return. All messages went unanswered. Intelligence Chief Vaktul delivered the reconnaissance report. "We have tracked human ships to the galactic edge, but they have disappeared beyond our sensor range. We believe they have entered the void between galaxies." "Why would they go so far?" asked Minister Veltar. "Unknown. Our deep space probes detected massive energy signatures in that direction before the humans left. Perhaps they were investigating something." The investigation into humanity's departure had revealed uncomfortable truths. Council records showed that human proposals had been rejected consistently for the past 50 years. Human warnings about unknown threats had been dismissed as paranoia. Human suggestions for defensive improvements had been voted down as unnecessary. The humans had not left because of a single incident. They had left because the Council had stopped listening to them. We treated them as junior partners, Zethkari admitted to his private staff. We thought their ideas were too radical, too risky. We wanted them to follow our lead instead of taking their own initiative. His aide asked the question that everyone was thinking. What if they do not want to come back? Zethkari had no answer. The Council had pushed humanity away for decades. They had rejected human friendship and ignored human expertise. Now they needed human help desperately, but they had no right to ask for it. Sir, his aide continued, what if they left because they knew something we did not? What if there really is a threat coming from deep space? That thought terrified Zethkari more than anything else. What if humanity had tried to warn them about a real danger? What if the humans had left to face that danger alone because they knew the Council would never act quickly enough? The possibility that humanity was fighting for survival in the dark between galaxies, while the Council's civilization slowly collapsed, made Zethkari feel sick. The emergency session ended with no solutions and no hope. The Council could not replace human capabilities. They could not contact humanity. They could not solve the growing crises without human innovation. All they could do was watch their civilization fall apart and hope that somewhere in the darkness, humanity remembered the galaxy they had left behind. 3 years after humanity disappeared, the long-range sensors on the edge of Council space detected something impossible. Energy readings so massive they broke the measuring instruments. Movement patterns that followed no known physics. Signals that seemed almost alive. Lieutenant Zeknal was on duty at Deep Space Monitoring Station Alpha when the alerts began. He had never seen readings like these. The computer systems kept crashing as they tried to process the data. Sir, he called. To his supervisor, we have massive contacts approaching from the Galactic Rim. Commander Telvak hurried to the sensor station. The display showed energy signatures larger than entire star systems. Whatever was coming moved faster than anything should be able to move. Run full diagnostics on the sensor array, Telvak ordered. These readings cannot be correct, but the diagnostics came back clean. The sensors were working perfectly. Something enormous was approaching from the void between galaxies. Telvak opened an emergency channel to Council Central Command. This is Deep Space Station Alpha. We have unknown contacts approaching at high speed. Estimated arrival at border colonies in 72 hours. The response came back immediately. Station Alpha, please confirm your readings. Central Command shows no threats in your sector. Sir, I am uploading sensor data now. These contacts are definitely real and definitely hostile. 3 hours later, the first border colony went silent. New Eden was a peaceful farming world on the edge of Council space. The colonists grew food for the mining stations deeper in the frontier. They had no military defenses beyond a small patrol ship. The distress signal lasted only minutes. Unknown ships in orbit, massive vessels, design unknown. They are not responding to communication attempts. They are beginning some kind of bombardment. The energy beams are not like anything we have seen. They seem to be breaking down matter at the molecular level. Send help immediately. Then silence. When the Council fleet arrived 6 hours later, they found nothing. No colony, no buildings, no people. Even the planet's atmosphere was gone. What remained was a dead rock floating in space. The attacking ships had vanished. Admiral Cressitar studied the sensor logs from the patrol ship that had escaped. The data made no sense. The enemy vessels were hundreds of kilometers long. They moved without visible engines. Their weapons disintegrated matter completely, leaving no debris behind. What manner of technology is this? He asked his science. Officer. Unknown, sir. The energy patterns do not match any known physics. The ships appear to adapt their configuration during flight. They are not built like any vessels in our database. Over the next week, 6 more colonies disappeared. Each attack followed the same pattern. Massive ships appeared without warning. They destroyed everything completely. They vanished before help could arrive. The Council called an emergency meeting to address the crisis. Zethkari stood before representatives who looked more frightened than he had ever seen them. We face an enemy unlike anything in our history, he announced. They show no interest in communication. They take no prisoners. They leave no survivors. They appear to consume entire worlds. Dr. Zenkril raised a shaking hand. The energy signatures matched descriptions in the ancient archives. There are legends of machine intelligences that devoured civilizations millions of years ago. Legends, scoffed Admiral Cressitar. We need facts, not stories. The facts are that conventional weapons have no effect on these ships, Zethkari replied coldly. The facts are that they destroyed our fastest cruiser in 30 seconds. The facts are that they are heading toward our core systems, intelligence. Chief Vaktul delivered the most disturbing news. We have found references to these entities in the human databases they left behind. Captain Steve Rogers of Human Intelligence filed multiple reports about energy readings from deep space. His reports date back 5 years. The chamber fell silent. 5 years ago, the humans had detected this threat. 5 years ago, they had tried to warn the Council. What did the reports say? Zethkari asked quietly. Captain Rogers believed that something was awakening in the void between galaxies. He recommended immediate development of adaptive defense systems and deep space reconnaissance missions. His proposals were rejected by the Council Defense Committee. Admiral Cressitar looked uncomfortable. The proposals were too expensive. The threat was unproven. We saw no evidence of any danger. The humans saw evidence, Vaktul continued. They had detected anomalous energy patterns for months before they left. They knew something was coming. The terrible truth was becoming clear. Humanity had not abandoned the Council out of anger or pride. They had left to face a threat that the Council refused to acknowledge. The attacks continued. The enemy ships, which the Council began calling Devourers, swept through the outer colonies like a plague. Traditional military tactics proved useless. The aliens were fighting an enemy they could not understand with weapons that had no effect. General Mortak of the Zentorian Defense Force reported the same story from every battle. The Devourers adapt to our tactics within hours. Energy weapons that damage them in the first battle have no effect in the second. Ship formations that work once never work again. How is that possible? Demanded Admiral Crestar. They appear to be machine intelligences with the ability to upgrade themselves instantly. They learn from every encounter and share that knowledge across their entire fleet. The Council's military leaders faced an impossible situation. How do you fight an enemy that becomes immune to everything you try? How do you defeat ships that grow stronger with each battle? In the human archives, they found part of the answer. Admiral Grace Martinez had proposed the Adaptive Defense Network 5 years earlier. The system would have created a fleet of ships that could modify themselves in real time to counter any threat. The ships would learn and evolve just like the enemy. The Council had rejected the proposal as too risky and experimental. Now we see why the humans wanted adaptive defenses, General Mortak said bitterly. They knew we would face an adaptive enemy, but knowing about the solution did not help. The Adaptive Defense Network required technology that only humans fully understood. The aliens could read the technical specifications, but they could not build the systems without human engineering expertise. Dr. Kevin Thompson's research files revealed even more disturbing information. He had studied machine intelligence psychology for decades. His work suggested that the Devourers were not just destroying civilizations for resources, they were doing it for sport. The enemy shows signs of predator behavior, his notes explained. They enjoy the hunt. They prefer victims who fight back because it makes the game more interesting. They deliberately allow some ships to escape, so those ships can spread fear and prepare stronger defenses for the next attack. This explained why the Devourers always vanished before reinforcements arrived. They were not afraid of Council forces. They were giving their victims time to prepare better defenses so the next battle would be more challenging. The psychological warfare was working. Panic spread through Council space faster than the Devourers themselves. Entire fleets deserted their posts. Civilian populations fled toward the galactic core, creating refugee crises that overwhelmed planetary resources. On Vega Prime, Dr. Thelmar watched his people prepare to evacuate their homeworld. The Devourers were still hundreds of light years away, but the Vegans had lost hope of survival. Dr. Johnson would have found a way to fight them, he said to his assistant. Human medicine could have protected us from their bioweapons. Human psychology could have helped us understand their tactics. His assistant looked puzzled. Bioweapons, sir? The Devourers use energy weapons. Read Dr. Johnson's files on machine. Intelligence warfare. The Devourers will use biological attacks once they determine our physical weaknesses. They always escalate their methods to prolong the conflict. The prediction proved accurate. Within days, reports came in of Devourer ships releasing strange gases into planetary atmospheres. The gases caused immediate organ failure in several species. Traditional medicine had no cure. Dr. Patricia Lee's research notes contained detailed treatments for biological warfare agents, but the alien doctors could not synthesize the medicines without human biochemistry knowledge. They watched helplessly as millions died from diseases that humans could have cured. The diplomatic situation collapsed completely. Without human negotiators to maintain peace agreements, old enemies turned on each other even as the Devourers approached. The Fringe Collective and the Core Worlds began fighting over refugee rights. The Draconian Empire accused the Zentorians of cowardice for withdrawing their fleets. Ambassador George Carter's protocols for crisis diplomacy might have prevented the internal wars, but the remaining diplomats could not implement them. Human, diplomatic methods relied on understanding psychology and emotions that other species could not read. As the Devourers pushed deeper into Council space, panic turned to despair. The enemy was unstoppable. The Council military was falling apart. Internal conflicts weakened defenses even further. But the worst realization was yet to come. Chief Engineer Nancy White's defensive designs had been built into key strategic locations throughout Council space. The aliens had modified those designs over the years following standard engineering practices, instead of human innovation principles. When the Devourers reached the first major defensive, the Council chambers on Centauri Prime had been moved deep underground. Above the surface, Devourer ships darkened the sky like storm clouds. The enemy had reached the heart of galactic civilization, and there was nowhere left to run. Zethkari stood before the last gathering of Council representatives. Many species were already extinct. Others existed only in these final underground shelters. The galaxy that had thrived for 10,000 years was dying. "We gather for the final time," Zethkari began, his voice echoing in the small bunker. "Not to plan victory, but to understand our failure." Admiral Krestar sat with his head in his clawed hands. The proud Draconian Empire had lasted exactly 18 hours against the Devourer fleet. His mighty warships had been reduced to scrap metal while he watched helplessly from the command bridge. "We found more human files in the abandoned archives," Intelligence Chief Vactal reported. Commander Rick Stone had identified the Devourer weakness 3 years ago. The chamber turned to him with desperate hope. A weakness? After months of unstoppable defeat, could there still be a chance? "The Devourers have an adaptation cycle," Vactal continued. "Their machine intelligence can counter any attack, but only after experiencing it once." Commander Stone calculated that rapid sequential strikes using completely different tactics could overwhelm their learning algorithms. "Then we can still fight them," Admiral Krestar said, reaching for his weapon. "No," Vactal replied sadly. "The strategy requires precise timing, perfect coordination, and the ability to deploy 7 different attack methods in rapid sequence. Only human tactical computers could process the calculations fast enough." The hope died as quickly as it had appeared. The aliens had the knowledge, but they lacked the tools to use it. Human innovation had always been about more than just understanding problems. It was about implementing solutions that seemed impossible. Dr. Thelmar delivered the medical report with a broken voice. "The bioweapons have reached the core worlds. Mortality rate is 97% across all species." "What about Dr. Lee's treatment protocols?" asked Dr. Zenkrell. "We cannot synthesize the medicines. Human biochemistry used compounds that we had never studied. Dr. Lee could create cures from materials that we considered toxic or useless." Engineer Torval stood up slowly. He looked older than his species normally aged. "The defensive systems are failing across all remaining worlds. We cannot maintain them without human engineering intuition." "Be specific," Zethkari commanded. The humans built adaptive systems that could modify themselves during battle. We removed those modifications because they seemed dangerous. We wanted predictable, controllable defenses. And the Devourers break through predictable defenses in minutes. They cannot counter systems that change faster than they can adapt. But we cannot operate truly adaptive systems because we cannot think fast enough to control them. The bitter irony was complete. The Council had rejected human solutions because they seemed too risky, too unpredictable, too creative. They had wanted safe, traditional answers to problems. But safe answers were useless against an enemy that could counter any traditional approach. Minister Veltar of the Andorian Federation spoke for the first time since arriving in the bunker. I have been reviewing the diplomatic archives. Ambassador, Carter had established communication protocols for first contact with machine intelligences. You mean we could have negotiated with the Devourers? Zethkari asked. Possibly. His protocols were based on understanding machine psychology rather than treating artificial intelligences like biological species. But the attempts would have needed to begin years ago before the Devourers reached our space. Why years ago? Because machine intelligences establish their behavioral patterns during their first encounters with a civilization. Once they identify a species as prey, they cannot change that designation. The first contact determines everything. Another human solution that had come too late. The Council had not even tried to communicate with the Devourers because they assumed negotiation was impossible. They had approached the crisis with military thinking instead of diplomatic innovation. The communication array crackled to life with a final transmission from the Surface Defense Forces. Underground Command, this is Captain Fellmore of the Orbital Defense Platform. The Devourers have begun their final assault. Energy readings are off all scales. Estimate complete planetary sterilization within 6 hours. Captain Fellmore's voice carried the exhaustion of hopeless battle. Sir, we found one more thing in the human archives. Chief Engineer White had designed a planetary defense grid that could protect entire star systems. The plans are complete. The technology was tested and proven. Why was it never built? Zethkari demanded. The Council rejected it as too expensive 5 years ago. The proposal required cooperation between species that had never worked together before. It needed creative engineering solutions that only humans could provide. And now? Now it is too late. The construction would have taken 3 years with human supervision. We could not build it in 30 years without them. The transmission ended as the orbital platform was destroyed. Through the bunker's periscope, they could see the lights of cities going out one by one as Devourer weapons swept across the planet's surface. Zethkari activated the final broadcast array, sending a message that would reach every corner of the galaxy before the transmitters were destroyed. This would be the Council's last communication to the universe. This is Speaker Zethkari of the Galactic Council, broadcasting from Centauri Prime. Our civilization is ending. Not because we lacked courage or strength, but because we lacked wisdom. He paused, looking at the faces of species that would be extinct within hours, representatives of cultures that had existed for thousands of years, now reduced to frightened refugees in an underground shelter. 3 years ago, humanity left our space without explanation. We called them ungrateful. We said they abandoned their responsibilities. We believed they were selfish and short-sighted. We were wrong. Humanity tried to warn us of the threat we now face. They proposed defenses that could have saved us. They offered innovations that we rejected as too radical. They saw dangers that we dismissed as impossible. We thought ourselves the wise guardians of galactic peace. We believed our traditional methods were superior to human creativity. We wanted them to follow our lead instead of taking initiative. We never realized that in a universe full of impossible threats, the impossible was exactly what we needed. The bunker shook as Devourer weapons reached the underground levels. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered. We mourned not just our worlds, but the partnership we were too proud to value. Humanity offered us friendship, innovation, and protection. In return, we gave them criticism, restrictions, and rejection. If any humans receive this message, know that we finally understand what we lost. Know that we recognize the gift you offered us. Know that we remember your warnings and regret our failure to listen. If our civilization has a legacy, let it be this lesson. When someone offers you a new way of thinking, do not reject it because it seems dangerous. The real danger lies in refusing to adapt. The transmission equipment sparked and went dead. Above them, the last of Centauri Prime's defenses fell silent. Dr. Zenkral spoke quietly in the darkness. Do you think they are still alive out there? The humans? I hope so, Zethkari replied. Someone should survive to remember that we tried, even if we failed. Engineer Torval activated a small emergency beacon. I am setting this to broadcast. Human technical specifications on all frequencies. If they are still fighting the Devourers, they might need this information. What specifications? Asked Dr. Thelmar. Everything we learned about Devourer tactics. All our failed experiments. Every mistake we made. Maybe human engineers can use our failures to build better solutions. It was a small gesture, but it felt important. Even in defeat, they could try to help the people they had failed to understand. The bunker shook again, more violently this time. Through the walls they could hear the sound of matter being disintegrated. The Devourers had found them. I wonder if they knew, Minister Veltar said sadly. When the humans left, did they know we would face this alone? They knew, Zethkari replied. That is why they left. They could not save us from our own stubbornness, so they went to fight the battle we refused to prepare for. The walls began to glow as Devourer weapons cut through the rock above them. The end was only minutes away. Perhaps they will succeed where we failed, Dr. Zenkral said. Perhaps human adaptability will find a way to stop what we could not. Perhaps, Zethkari agreed. But if they do, they will do it alone. They will save a galaxy that rejected them, protect worlds that never appreciated them, and defeat an enemy that we refuse to acknowledge. That seems very human, Admiral Cressitar said with something like admiration. To fight for people who never understood them. The ceiling exploded inward. Energy beams cut through the chamber. The last representatives of galactic civilization faced their end with dignity, thinking of the species that had tried to save them and the mistakes that had made salvation impossible. Somewhere in the void between galaxies, human ships continued their desperate battle against the Ancients.